Hello and welcome to Inside the Green Room with PB3. I am not PB3. You're back with Blair Bryant Nichols. And today I've got two special guests with us that I'm going to introduce briefly here. So our first guest is Melanie McMurrain, and she has a unique insight into the mindset triggers and needs of an audience while understanding the techie details and limitations of ESPs and CRM databases. Over the last 5 years, she's put these skills to good use in the trenches of the online business world, designing and managing multiple seven-figure launches on behalf of countless entrepreneurs, authors, course creators, teachers, thought leaders, and even a former professional arena league football player and one of the original sharks from Shark Tanks. Welcome, Melanie.
Thank you. Excited to be here.
And we also have Jodi Daniels, who's a certified informational privacy professional and a founder of Red Clover Advisors. She has more than 20 years of experience in privacy, strategy, marketing, and finance roles, and has worked with companies such as Deloitte, the Home Depot, Cox Enterprises, and Bank of America. Welcome, Jodi.
Hi, so glad to be here.
And I'm so glad we could have you both on today because you both have super interesting backgrounds and are doing amazing work. And you definitely both have points of view that we don't hear about often on this podcast we've heard from a lot of people who are involved in the meeting planner community and the event planning side. We also hear from a lot of speakers and just kind of talking about, their experience in digital and live events. But I think there's really important components to both that might be overlooked when you're thinking about event planning and when you're a speaker out there working in some of these new platforms, digital or live. So I want to dig into our conversation, but learn a little bit more about both of you first. So Melanie, why don't you tell us a little bit more about how you got started in this world of digital marketing and working with founders and entrepreneurs that are, a lot like the people in our audience. So tell us a little bit more about that.
Well, as anybody in entrepreneurship nowadays, everybody has that story, whether it's sleeping on your sister's couch or being laid off or being fired or some life-changing experience that led us here. And I actually went to school for psychology and education, and I was a general manager of a local children's museum, living in a nonprofit world. And when you live nonprofit, your identity is consumed by what you do. And I was one of those people who had to work with a board of directors that I didn't necessarily conform to the policies. And so I found myself putting one of those lovely posts on Facebook, the things you say like, so, this chapter of my life has come to a close. And by the way, if anybody's hiring, let me know. Within an hour and a half, I had job offers. And one of the best job offers that I had was from a friend of mine who said, I don't really know what you do, and I don't think you know anything about marketing, but with your drive and passion, if I could get you to sit down at a computer for 9 hours a day, I think you would love this. So I said, well, I'm not doing anything else, so sure. So I started working for an agency and got thrown immediately into the world of Infusionsoft and marketing funnels and lead generation. And I called it Confusionsoft or Infusion Hard back then, right? Like it was definitely a learning curve. But for anybody listening, that was 2014, which was not that long ago. And now I have my own agency and I fully specialize in email deliverability and content and lead generation for my clients. And IT was right. I absolutely love it.
Amazing. I love that. It's, often the pivot that kind of leads you to where you've meant to be. And Jodi, how did you get started in the world of privacy? I know you've had a bunch of different roles, but what got you interested in that and going deeper to even get certified in it?
Yeah, so the connection to privacy is pre-Facebook ads. We had gotten started in the ad industry with targeted advertising, kind of the same pixel, but there were all these different advertising networks. I was working at autotrader.com at the time and had created a behaviorally targeted ad network. So essentially I stalked you for cars. If you came to AutoTrader, you were searching for a Toyota Highlander, I would serve you an ad somewhere out on the World Wide Web. And the online advertising industry came together and said, well, we really should prevent some government legislation to keep doing what it is that we're doing. We're going to self-police us. I was responsible for Auto Trader's compliance with that. And then from there, it kind of grew. We realized no one was doing this full time at the company. So I created a full-time role for privacy. I built out the privacy program then at Cox Automotive. I moved after 3 years of doing that to Bank of America and was the digital privacy expert there. And it'll actually be 3 years this August where I left after 19 years to the day because I started my career in accounting. So yes, I know exactly actually the day that I started my first job. And it just happens the way, the stars align, that when I was giving my 2 weeks, because I wasn't going to do any more, on the 2 weeks, it was that last day. And that was when I started Red Clover Advisors. And it was all about being able to continue the mission of helping companies really build trust and relationships while also complying with privacy laws. And that's how I got started, kind of before it was cool with Facebook ads.
I love that. I mean, I think building trust and relationships is kind of the topic of today, as event planners are seeking new ways to build their audience and launch these new events. I've been talking to a lot of speakers about digital stages, and the one thing that we keep seeing is that there's new digital stages all the time. So there's new virtual summits, there's new conferences, and each time I hear about one of them or they're interested in one of our speakers, oftentimes they're saying, will they promote? Will they send to their list? Will they help us? So the events are also leaning on speakers to help them kind of drive some interest. So it seems like there's a lot of joint ventures going into these new events. And, I think a lot of speakers and event planners aren't quite sure how best to accomplish this. So Melanie, I want to start with something that, we talked about and, talking about list building. So let's start off talking about kind of like the best practices around list building, and then we can talk about kind of the ideal list. So someone's planning an event. You've worked with entrepreneurs and thought leaders and others on their launches. I imagine many of them have their own events as well. So, what do you share with clients as they're getting started with, any sort of launch where they're trying to build a new audience or launch a new event or product? What do they need to think about, and how do they get started?
Well, the number one thing that you need to think about when you're going to build a list is your ideal customer. Who do you want opting in? Because I could create a really awesome opt-in for a recipe book of gluten-free recipes to get cheap opt-ins, but I can guarantee you they're not going to be happy to be on my email marketing, list, right? It's a disconnect. So you want to attract the people who are your ideal clients, are your ideal buyers. So you want to use that language and that positioning in the titles of your lead magnets, in how you are attracting them. What are people typing into that Google search engine? What are they looking for? But I'll give you a clue about vocabulary and words that you use. And this is really critical. A lot of times we get into like our own names of our products or our own language that you have to educate people. If I wanted to teach people how to speak Spanish, my landing page couldn't be written in Spanish, right? I need to tell them, hey, do you want to learn how to speak Spanish? Sign up here for my course. So often people make that mistake of writing their landing pages and their sales copy in their language when your potential customer isn't ready for it yet. So you have to market to them what they want, and then you can sell them what they need. So what are they actually typing into Google? What are they actually looking for? If you can give them that, you'll get the right people.
I love that. Yeah, it's about speaking to your ideal audience and kind of figuring out the language that they would use to describe your product or service, not what your kind of insider knowledge, would be using to otherwise speak to them. In people at your level or in your peers, you're going to use a different kind of vocabulary. And Jodi, that I would imagine that applies to in the world of privacy too. People might not really know what that means. So I like how you framed it as building trust and relationships with the customer. How do you, as you're talking to a new client, get them familiar with the terminology and are able to kind of help them understand really what the imperatives here are and how to navigate them?
Yeah, so a couple of key things. One of the pieces most people think about in privacy is, oh, I have to have a privacy notice and a cookie banner because that's what they see, that's what they hear, and they think, well, that's all I need. That's actually what I call window dressing. It's sort of the outside part, very important, but you actually can't write that until you know what data you're processing. So that's almost the end result, kind of like what Melanie, you were just talking about. In my world, the privacy notice is the end. That's just the communication vehicle of, hey, let me tell you, you're giving me all this information. This is what I'm collecting. This is what I'm going to do with it. Well, you actually can't write that until you have all of that information. And that's how you start figuring out, well, wait, what am I actually doing with this? And is that what the customer is going to expect? And so when we think about the email list, and Blair, you had been mentioning how there's such a push to be able to drive people to these different events, we have to be thinking about, is the message that I'm going to send them going to do my very formal term, scratch your head test? Is the person receiving that message going to say, did I expect that? Is that in line with what I thought? And that's the connection about privacy. It's all about, yep, there's laws and there's some foundations and we need to do that. But it's really all about connecting, because we're going to be working with teams like Melanie to be able to build this great list and build this great connection. We want to maintain it. They're buying our product or service or signing up for our lead magnet because they trust we're going to deliver great content. And we have to keep delivering great content. We also can't surprise them, whether it be we use their data in a way that they didn't expect, we don't protect their data in a manner, in a proper manner. Those are all surprises and violate the trust that we're trying so hard to build with these customers.
Right, and I think that that kind of speaks to what Melanie was talking about, is like people who sign up or opt into a list and then all of a sudden are getting content or getting information about something that they don't necessarily have an interest in or didn't think they were signing up for, might be feeling a little misled. So Melanie, talk to us a little bit more about finding the right audience. So, when we had a previous discussion, you said people often go out and buy a list of, huge number of contacts because they hear if you're going to launch a course, if you're going to do an event, you need X number of people on your list to make it worthwhile. So how do people build the right kind of list that's going to connect, like Jodi's talking about?
It's really important to look at who you're positioning it in front of. And if you can show up in Google search engines, when people, I just talked about what they're typing in the Google search bar. Imagine if your landing page or your website showed up for them. So often when we're just getting started or when we're in a niche that has a lot of competition, that doesn't always happen. So you may be wanting to use something like Facebook ads or Google AdWords or YouTube ads in order to get people to your landing page. It's super important that you do know the rules and expectations, because like what Jodi was just saying, that those banners and like that privacy policy, if you're running paid traffic, those things are required before you can do that. So, think about what you have to have in order to attract people and actually not get your hand slapped and get your costs to go way up. But also you need to think about who it is, envision that person that's typing it in. What gender are they? What magazines and publications are they reading? What are they, looking for? Do they have kids? Are they moms? Are they dads? Are they in the corporate America world? Are they financial planners? What do they do? What do they follow? Whether it's on social media or through keyword targeting, you can really hone in on and narrow down a great targeted audience that will find your right people. One of the best ways to know your right people, if you have existing clients, you can survey them. You can ask them, what publications are you reading? How did you find out about me? What is the biggest thing that you need right now when it comes to insert your niche here? So that way you can be hearing their language and knowing what they're searching for. Because a lot of us, when we're starting out, you might assume you know what they're searching for, but if you ask them and get direct feedback, which by the way, if you can get them to reply to an email is awesome for email deliverability. If you can create that two-way communication, you immediately build that relationship by increasing trust because they believe that you care about them, which you should. And we can really hone in on our targeting to get the ideal people, because when you talk to the people you like working with, you can find more people just like them.
Right. And I think that's just an important point to keep bringing up, is the importance of speaking to your ideal audience. You know, I've heard a speaker recently say, like, if your ideal audience is moms, speak to moms. Dads are still going to buy the product because they're going to recognize you're solving a problem that they may have too. But don't try to just spread your message so that it can suit any individual that, you know, might potentially be interested. Just talk to your ideal audience.
Language is so important. Let me give a quick example. I had a client who was emailing out and was not getting conversions, but he knew he had the right people. Then he ran a survey and he asked people to talk about what they buy at the supermarket. Every single person responded back with, when I go to the grocery store, when I go shopping, when I get groceries, they all said groceries. He realized in his subject lines, he was always calling it a supermarket. And that's not what his people call it.
Right.
He changed it to grocery store and changed his language, and his conversions tripled. Something as simple as that. Like, that's the most tiniest tweak, right? Do you call it a buggy or a carriage, right? Know what the language that your people use, and it will increase your conversions and continue to get the right people.
That's fascinating. And you know, Jodi, that the language in you know, privacy policy seems like, you know, for a lot of people, it probably is just legalese, you know, but how do you make it accessible so people really understand kind of what they're consenting to and, you know, like you said, their expectation of how it's going to be used appropriately? You know, how do you coach and massage that language for your clients to make sure that their audience, you know, has a real understanding and they're not going to face some backlash in the future?
Yeah, so a couple really important ways. And first, I'm going to address one of the things, Melanie, that you had mentioned, which is the need for privacy notice to get those paid ads across. A lot of times I see people saying, well, I just need any privacy notice. I can just go borrow it from, you know, that site over there. They must be smart. I'll just grab theirs. Or, you know, a template online. And it's really important that it's your privacy notice. That's relevant to your business. And if you wrote one a long time ago, also make sure it's accurate and really reflects what you're doing in your business today. It should really be a dynamic document. So the way that we can address this is in a couple ways. You know, it is a document that has some requirements, so we have to make sure that we cover them. We can do that literally on the privacy notice using hyperlinks for the different subjects that are there, using bullets, using key phrases, explaining the products and services that we have. You're seeing a move to have summaries of privacy notices up at the top. And more importantly than that is, imagine the place where you're actually signing up for whatever it is you're signing up for. So let's take a lead magnet. You know, there, if we're asking for certain types of information, we can say why we need this information. And if you're in the health space or the financial space, or maybe you're asking for information that might be kind of questionable, explain why you need this information. Because people are a little bit hesitant to give information out, and sometimes they might even give the wrong information. I've seen places where it's required to give information, but I don't really want to give you my household income or tell you how many kids I have or what my dog's pet's name is, because I'm not sure how you're going to use it. If you address that objection up front, we're again able to build that trust relationship. And then, you know, obviously in the privacy notice, I can also cover in plain language with my bullets and my subsections and all those things there. But actually at the point of collection, I've been able to explain why I want your dog's name so that I can deliver you a great experience. And the other thing I would caution is not to put we care about your information. We never rent or sell your information. It's 100% guaranteed. I see that all the time. And that's actually puts yourself in a lot of liability. So we can talk about what you should put there, but let's not put those words there. We don't want you to be in a high liability situation.
Okay, and I do want to come back to the idea of, how people can know, if their privacy has been violated and what protections they truly actually have, because I think most people probably aren't aware. But let's kind of couch that under email deliverability, because this is something, Melanie, we were talking about, how, it really matters that people can actually get your emails and they're not getting blocked by spam or going into junk mail, or that you're just not spamming your list so much that people are voluntarily unsubscribing or blocking you or whatever. So talk to us a little bit about how you coach your consultants on that topic, or your clients specifically on email deliverability and how to maximize it.
Well, and the most important thing, and what my clients usually see, is they see a decrease in their email open rates. And so when you're building a list, and the percentage of people that are opening your emails is heartbreaking, right? You send out this email, you put so much work, you may even hire a copywriter, and then it's like, oh my gosh, only 15% of the people, 85% of the people, like, just totally didn't see that. And it can drive entrepreneurs crazy, right? Because you're spending money to build this list. You have people, you want to talk to them. So of course it's important to look at your subject lines, look at the formatting of your email, looking at the words that you're doing, because words absolutely matter. There's so many things that you can do to help increase the open rates, but the most important thing is to make sure that you are actually showing up in the inbox. So there's 3 things that you want to have to keep your deliverability up. Number 1, you want to have an indoctrination sequence. When you get new people added to your list, you want to set expectations and sharing with them how you're going to use their information, asking them to reply to you, engaging with them will quickly build the trust and the relationship with that you have that will ultimately lead to more sales, revenue, booked calls, booked clients, whatever it is, butts in seats, people coming through your doors. It works. So setting expectations with an indoctrination sequence. 2, removing people from your list who don't engage. And you can do that by 2 ways. 1, using a third-party service to scrub your list, right? Taking the email addresses and checking to make sure that they're actually viable. They're not spam traps. They aren't abandoned email addresses. They aren't junk email addresses that you're mailing. So you want to remove those from your list. And the verified valid emails that just aren't opening, number 3, is you want to put them through a re-engagement sequence. So you want to give them something super juicy to get them to come back, opening your emails. If they don't respond to that, stop emailing them, because emailing people who are not responding will lead to the people who want to hear from you to not be able to find your emails, because they're going to be hidden in a promotions, updates, forums, or worse, the spam folder.
Great. That's great advice. I keep thinking about, when you sign up for something and then all of a sudden you're getting so many emails and you immediately kind of regret it. So I think there's also kind of a timing and a sequence and a slow drip that, is involved in that. And also when you sign up for something and then you start getting ads or emails that you didn't really think that you had signed up for. So I think that kind of crosses over into what you're talking about, Jodi. But when you were sharing before, what I kept thinking about is how I get all these emails now with privacy notice updates. Every brand, every company, anyone that I guess I've ever done any sort of business with online, I assume is required by law to send these out. But to what Melanie is talking about, I don't read a lot of these. I don't open a lot of them even. So is there, is it on them to get me to read it? Does it matter if they know that it's been on read? Is it enough to just send it? What are kind of the requirements for these privacy notices, and how do you encourage clients to get them out to their consumers so that they are read and that they give them the best chance of protection from any liability?
Yeah, so it actually depends on the law and the type of changes in the privacy notice that actually determines if I have to send you the communication. For some companies, it might be enough to just update it on their website. For others, recognize it's a communication and I want to tell you what it is that we've done. So it requires a little bit of an analysis, quite honestly, to decide if you have have to do it. But to your question, as a brand, if I just email it to you and you don't open it, it's okay. I mean, I did my job of communicating it to you. What you'll see a lot is on the website, you might see banners up at the top that say we've updated our privacy notice. You might see them up at the bottom. There's different ways to be able to communicate what that has happened with your data. And again, it kind of just depends on what we've done that's different, or if we've just updated it because we needed to. So you kind of have to go through what that analysis looks like. So it's a good idea to be able to communicate. It just goes to the whole idea of this is an opportunity for you to really put your brand forward as we care about what you're doing. And in some of those emails, you can kind of see the difference between the ones who just made it a legal email and I was supposed to do it, here you go, and others who took time to really explain what it is that they're doing. I mean, I got one where it blatantly explained, hey, we've been selling your data for years. And so under the new California law, any of you who are in California, we've just decided we're not going to do that for you anymore. You've been opted out. For all of the other states, sorry, we're going to keep doing it, but we're going to give you some choices. Click here. It was a really interesting communication by a very big brand. Anyone's interested, I'll tell it to you off air.
Yeah, I just was thinking about that and kind of wondering where responsibility begins and ends with that. As we started our conversation around, trust and building a relationship, I think what's really important to, keep in mind is that, people aren't always aware if this privacy has been violated, and they might not be aware that by signing up for this list, it might expose them to, other promotions or other things. So, what are ways that people can really ensure that they don't, from the consumer side? So what are some ways where you can kind of be triggered or notified that maybe, your privacy might have been compromised, or that you might have, kind of committed or consented to something that you didn't want? Like, what are the steps to reverse that? And then, from the marketing side, like, we've talked about some of the things to do. What are the things that, kind of, again, to really avoid, to make sure that people aren't feeling like you're marketing to them and they're also getting hit up from all these other places that they didn't think that they would be hearing from? So, Jodi, did you want to jump in first?
I'll jump in. So a couple different places to be able to start. And the first is, it actually also depends on where the individual lives. So if I live in the United States and I sign up for an email, the way our email marketing laws apply is that it also kind of ties to your privacy notice and what I told you. If I told you that I might send you messages from me and messages about my products and services, as well as others I think you're interested in, then I can go ahead and send you as many emails as I want about any topic that I want. I then have to make sure that I can unsubscribe. So a big telltale is there no unsubscribe, appropriate in that footer. So that's kind of a big, huge one. The kind of caveat to that is if Jodi's in France now, or Jodi's in Canada, there's some very specific rules around what emails can and can't be sent. So, or if my privacy notice didn't say that I could send all those other messages. So there's all these other places where you kind of have to dig and read and understand. But if I signed up, to get Melanie's amazing emails, and I'm Jodi in France, and then she shared my list and I start getting them from Susie's company, I know she just shared my email and she shouldn't have done that. And I shouldn't be getting those types of messages. More specifically, if I signed up for Melanie's specific newsletter, or I bought a product from her, but now I'm getting all type of affiliate emails, but I didn't sign up for those either. That's also another big clue that there's something a bit of a disconnect. So we kind of have to understand the region that I'm in, how I signed up, what I was told when I was signed up. The unsubscribe is a must-have everywhere. And you had also talked about kind of what are my rights? What is it that I can do? In many of these laws under California and in the EU, I have rights. I can ask you to delete my data. I could ask you to tell me what type of data that you have on me. And there's a variety of ways I can do that. Most common is sort of an email buried in the privacy notice to exercise your rights. So I should be able to do those. And what a company has to think about is all those cool tools that Melanie is helping us use to make sure we can manage and understand and what's happening. All of those places have our data. So we, as the company, are responsible for all those places where our data is. Those CRM tools, email tools, the Facebook, Google, all of them have our data. So we need to be good stewards to vet the company and understand how we're passing data to be able to protect it. Because if they have a data breach, you, the company, and the brand are on the hook.
Right, right. So Melanie, how do people kind of, guard against this, as consumers and on the marketing side to make sure that they're preserving that trust and continuing to build and not detract from what they're trying to accomplish through their marketing?
Well, and I think that that's why it's so important to set expectations, because you're absolutely right. I have so many people who get people to opt in for their email list for a lead magnet or sign up for a webinar. And then all of a sudden they're promoting their swag or their products and services, or yes, even affiliate offers. And it's so important to always reference back why the person got on the list. So, hey, you signed up for a training, you signed up for a free lead magnet in the past. And because you were interested in that, I believe you would be interested in this offer. You have to bridge it. You have to make that connection so that they aren't, like Jodi said at the beginning, scratching their head going, am I in the twilight zone, right? Like, you have to have that language to set the expectation and give the person two options, ideally. One, say, no, I'm not interested in this affiliate offer. I don't want you to do stuff. I don't want you to send me stuff like this. I only want you to send me what I asked for in the beginning. Or two, allow them to completely unsubscribe. But again, that indoctrination sequence where you're setting those expectations, and when you're writing the copy, to really consider how you're segmenting your list, how you're communicating with them, that they're not going to be scratching their heads. I'm going to steal that technical term, Jodi.
Yeah, I think segmentation is such a key too. Jodi talked about segmenting by geography and region and understanding kind of where your customers live, but segmenting in your marketing, every email shouldn't be a list that goes out to everyone, to your full list. You should think very, strategically about the emails you're sending and what the audience for each of those are. And that just gives you more opportunities to personalize and customize rather than just trying to create an email that you think can serve a general audience each time. You can get a lot more creative and more specific if you segment and do those right things. So I want to shift gears now, because you're both speakers as well as, running your businesses. And, this podcast is for speakers and meeting planners. So I want to hear a little bit, who are some people either in your space and in your field that you kind of go to as thought leaders, or that you recommend, or just kind of inspirational speakers in general, authors that you would recommend that can give our audience, a deeper knowledge on your expertise or other things that have helped you in your business. So Jodi, what are some people that have influenced you and throughout your career and life?
So it's an interesting answer I have for this. As a kid, we would take long vacations in the summer, and we were subjected to listen to Zig Ziglar, and Tom Hopkins. So my parents would think we were asleep, and we would have to listen to all these sales tapes. And I think subliminally they've come through, but they were really, and that was on tape, right, for long periods of time. So they would always tell stories. They were very charismatic. They really connected. And quite honestly, I learned a lot from my dad. He loves to speak. I mean, some of the pictures that I can remember about him are of him speaking, and he loves to connect. He loves to tell stories. And I think I'm terrible at trivia and like actual names in today's marketplace. You don't want me on your trivia team. So I probably don't have like a perfect example now because I forget who they are after I listen. But to me, it's someone who just shares a story, and I connect with them, because that's what people want. They want to learn something, but they need to hear it in a manner that resonates. And I connect, and like, oh yeah, I get that. Thank you for sharing something. I can see myself in that scenario.
I think that really reinforces, what we're talking about is what you want to accomplish through your marketing and even through your privacy notice. You want to make it accessible, you want to connect, and then, give people at least enough information that they can decide if what you're sharing is valuable or if they need to dig deeper. Melanie, is there people that you've seen speak or, have been influential as you got started in this marketing world? Tell us a little bit more about that.
Well, I think probably one of my largest mentors is who I learned from directly. So Gary Henderson, he now is a consultant. He doesn't have a full agency, but he runs a group called the Entrepreneur Cooperative, and listening and, modeling what he teaches and how he manages digital marketing was really where I learned almost everything that I know today when it comes to the digital marketing space. So I greatly look forward to connecting with him, getting mentoring from him. He's still kind of my go-to speed dial, anytime I'm stumped on anything, and absolutely brilliant marketer. Content wise, I absolutely adore Stu McLaren and Jeff Walker. I think they're both very authentic, and they're models for membership and product launches, and how to build relationships the right way are definitely some key people. So if you're in the digital marketing space, they are definitely pivotal people to connect with and learn from.
That's awesome. Yeah, Stu and Jeff are great. Those are great suggestions. Jodi, what are your, I want to ask you both how our listeners can get in touch with you, but want to start first with, what are some closing thoughts or things that people, speakers and event planners in particular just need to keep in mind, or, things to avoid, that are often overlooked in your experience?
Absolutely. So some of them we've talked about. So a little bit of a summary is that privacy notice. It matters. It matters what is inside it. And you really, to craft one that's meaningful, you have to understand the data that you have and who your vendors are, what you're doing with it, why you're using it, and be able to craft it in a manner that makes sense to the person reading it. And you also have to understand where your audience is coming from, because there are different laws, and how you craft your landing page might differ if you have an international audience, or if you have people from Canada coming in versus if you're only in the United States. So it's really about knowing your audience and your goals and being able to bring all of it together, and recognizing it's not just a privacy notice. That's just a starting point. It's really the foundation. And the whole idea is that we're building this connection. How you protect the data and all of those tools matters, how we use the data, how we communicate. And, especially in the events world, we're using all kinds of really cool new tools and technologies to be able to engage, especially right now in the virtual world. Well, what data is passing through there? That really matters too. We need to understand and be mindful and think about, well, is that okay that I passed my personal data there? And be thoughtful kind of to that. So I would say to really make privacy a core part of the program, and not just sort of the afterthought, oh, at the end, I got to have that privacy notice, but really make it up at the beginning. And just like we think about finance and marketing and IT, privacy should be one of those as well. And then in terms of, should I answer how to get in touch with me now, or should we?
Yeah, I was just going to say, in terms of virtual events, that's so important that, you're thinking about all the different ways that data is getting processed and getting used. And so that up front, but also we keep talking about how with privacy when you're planning these events for international audiences, like Jodi said. So yeah, that was a perfect time to share then, how do our listeners get in touch with you if they want to learn more, or just ask you questions about their events and otherwise?
Absolutely. So Jodi, Jodi, at redcloveradvisors.com is my email. And then our website is just redcloveradvisors.com. And we're also active on Facebook and LinkedIn. So you can find me in either of those places. Really easy to locate, and would be delighted to have a conversation with anyone here.
Awesome. Yeah, definitely best left in the hands of an expert, and from what we discussed today. And Melanie, what are some of your closing thoughts? You've given us so many great things to keep in mind as far as, list building and targeting your ideal audience, but is there anything else that people often overlook in your experience, or that you would kind of recommend that people pay extra attention to?
So I always challenge my audiences and my clients to think differently. We spend so much money on our Infusionsoft or our ConvertKit or our Active Campaign or MailChimp to house our email contacts and to protect them. And we spend money to get people to opt in. And when you see somebody tap that unsubscribe button, it's like that high school rejection, right? Like you just were turned down from the prom. It's devastating. I want you to celebrate that unsubscribe. That person that's tapping that button is saying, thank you, but no thank you. It's not the right fit for me at this time. They may come back. They may not be gone for forever. I promise you, you're not on the email list of the grocery store that you shop at, your doctor's office, or other places that you don't need to. It doesn't mean you don't go and you don't purchase from them. It is much more insulting to have somebody on your list that never opens and never clicks, that's actually damaging your reputation, and you're paying for that contact. So not only did you pay to get them on there, but you're continuing to pay for them exponentially. So celebrate the people that unsubscribe and celebrate the people that open and click. Don't get offended when they leave. It's just not their time right now, and that's okay.
Right. And I love what you shared before about trimming your list and how important that is. And I think a lot of people, they just think bigger is better, and they want to keep seeing their list grow. And so it's hard to think, oh, I'm going to go through and actually delete these people. But like you mentioned, so many of these email services, CRMs, charge by the number of contacts. So like you said, you are literally paying for those people just to stay on your list when they're not taking any action. So you don't need to be as concerned about just growing and growing and growing that number. It needs to be the right people and the right audience for you to get the best benefits out of it. So Melanie, how can our listeners get in touch with you?
A couple ways. So you can visit my website, risemarketing.com. That's Rise with a Z. So risemarketing.com if you want to schedule a call or connect with me directly. If you're looking to just increase your email open rates and looking for some tips and strategies, you can go to the emailproject.com and you can opt in there, and you'll get my 5 fast ways to increase your email open rates.
Awesome. And our listeners can be sure that you can be trusted with her content if you opt in. And Jodi will make sure that anything that she shares with you is adhering to all the privacy needs. So Jodi, Melanie, thank you so much for joining us today inside the Green Room. It's been an amazing discussion. I really hope that this has been valuable for our listeners. And for all of you who are listening, please subscribe to Inside the Green Room with PV3. You can visit us at insidethegreenroompodcast.com and check out our resources. If you'd like to get in touch with me, I'm Blair at advanceyourreach.com. And I look forward to seeing you all next time inside the Green Room. Thanks so much.